Alright. Yep, we're here. Having a good time. We're gonna jump right back into what we were doing, which is this debate.
Will control them for the benefit of the population. And many of the private sector corporations in China aren't really private. For example, Huawei Technologies is technically a cooperative under Chinese law. But if you look at it, it doesn't function according to market logic, right? The way it functions, it's completely in coordination with the Chinese state, with the Chinese military.
Do we remember that thing I said earlier about fascism being the economic presupposition, having the economic prescription of state corporate power rolled together? That bit? And Huawei is technically a worker cooperative that just happens to work completely in line with what the state tells it to do.
It produces products based on what the 5-year plan says. It's a state-controlled megacorporation. Yes, that's technically private, but everything it does is in line with the Chinese Communist Party's vision.
Yeah, so it's an authoritarian agency in line with an authoritarian agency. Nothing you just described has to do with workers. In fact, China bans private unions or individual labor unions. Yeah.
No, it bans what it calls...
Nope, okay. Notice what Vosh said there. Individual private unions.
With the Chinese Communist Party's vision.
Yeah, so it's an authoritarian agency in line with an authoritarian agency. Nothing you just described has to do with workers. In fact, China bans private unions or individual labor unions.
Private or individual labor unions. Which, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
No, it bans what were called free trade unions, which were set up by the CIA, led by J. Lovestone.
No, independent labor unions are illegal in China.
You can't just... unions has been used against socialist countries around the world, and there's a constant demand in the New York Times and other publications that workers leave the communist union, where they feel at home, and join an entity...
Wait, you're loading... Everything you say is loaded with so much language.
That's not accurate.
The glorious state, works in tide with the workers. No, independent labor unions are illegal. People have tried to form unions and have been cracked down on.
U.S. controlled.
No, independent doesn't mean U.S. controlled. Freedom doesn't mean the CIA is running it.
Federation, Google J. Lovestone...
No, I'm sorry, do you have evidence that every single time individual Chinese workers try to form a labor union, it's being done in tandem with CIA work?
No, I'm telling you that when you refer to, quote, free trade unions, which is frequently done in American media, that refers to specific entities that are tied to the United States and American intelligence. It doesn't refer to just random groups started by random people.
Then what trade unions can people form? Or what labor unions can people form in America? In China, sorry.
Every Chinese worker is part of the government union.
Yes, the one government union.
Sometimes that union doesn't function the way it should. Other times it does. But when you refer to free trade unions, you're not talking about any union.
I'm talking about individual workers.
And notice, he will not move off of this point because he's a dishonest hack. That's it. He literally is refusing to move off of his the point that he somehow got on, which is incorrect. That Vosh had said free trade unions, when the only person who said free trade at all so far is Maupin. Because he's dishonest. He is a liar. A shill for fascists.
Civic groupings supported by the United
States,
you've already said. NGOs that operate in China.
No. I'm saying it is not legal for workers in China, independent workers who have nothing to do with the CIA, to independently form labor unions of their own volition. They have to join the All-Chinese Federation of Trade Unions, which falls under state control. Another apparatus.
1 second. Let me mute. Boop, 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 boop. Mute. What up?
Yeah, I can't be live. Oh, not sure. I can't go.
Nice. Nice.
Last one I have, we've just been kind of waiting on her. I'm probably going to go to her immediately tonight, by any means.
Fuck, come over.
Okay.
Bring weed. I will save my last ball.
I'll take a shower first. Tom, I really want to do.
Sure. I'm currently streaming.
Laundry capabilities?
Do I what?
You have laundry capabilities?
Yeah, I got hot water even, so.
Fuck yeah. Okay, cool, yeah. I didn't know what your utility situation was at the moment. I know you guys are struggling.
All my bills are currently on. So. Yeah, now I got water. I even got hot water.
Well, go ahead and smoke your hole. I'll bring some weed.
Hell yeah. I got Keef.
to smoke a bowl before I leave and shower.
That's all good. I'm currently streaming, like I'm going over some shit. So that's a thing. And then yeah, just come over. You'll get to see the new living room set up and everything.
Oh, we're practicing. We're gonna do a little bit of practice. We gotta test it. Now you and Caleb haven't tested it yet, have you?
We have.
So how's it with the two of you?
Great. We could hear each other.
Yes.
So, but what I don't know
'Cause, yeah,
is how you are gonna play into it.
fuck you, blank, whatever. Like, dude, we might just go through like a whole bunch of different two-syllable things of fuck you, things that we don't like.
That's-
Fuck you, grown out, fuck you, white, rich white, fuck you, fucking. No, rich white, fuck you, rich white.
Fuck you, bourgeois.
I was in my head. I was singing today. I was like, "Fuck you, rich guy, nice suit, slick tie."
But yeah, you go ahead and smoke a bowl and take a shower real quick. I'm gonna finish up going over what I'm going over on stream, and
And I'm not gonna buy a base. Okay, I can't buy a base.
can't justify it right now.
No, I mean, I don't tell me that because I'm gonna find a way to justify it because I can't. It's me. I can justify it right now. I
No,
want a base so I can have a base to play at home. The base that I'm supposed to play at home doesn't get played because it's like playing my top string book. What's the point of practicing on this thing? Very little.
learning
Like,
everything
it's
except for your B string. You can learn everything
Yeah,
except
but-
that top string.
Yeah, that's true, but like, it's almost a different instrument. Like, yeah, I didn't understand that until I played one than the other, but it is, like, I actually, that instrument makes it almost a different instrument.
Oh my god, Keith Bull, just go the fuck out for now. Holy shit.
Because, like, a lot of my scales that I would have to go up and down the neck, I'm actually
Yeah, the problem is you gotta learn what the other strings do as well. So I mean, you can play it because you're not changing anything really, except you're adding a B on top of your E.
I know this, and see, that's where I was. Until I played one. Like,
Uh.
actually played for a while.
It
It's
literally.
just another string. It's just another string, and it is just another string.
Uh-huh.
That I don't know how, I can't quite explain it, and I've heard people say it, and I've read it, and I've read it online. Everybody's like, yeah, once you have that fifth string, say you kiss your fourth string goodbye, like, it's like playing a different fucking guitar. It's like, it almost is like the difference between bass and guitar.
But the
Not
scales are
quite,
the same,
like,
except you
it's-
can play it
it's that-
up higher on the neck. On that B, you can start there and play. But if you're learning the basic scales, that four string
But-
is all you need.
Well, you know, I'll keep this. I'll keep this because A, it is my very first bass. B, drop D is fun. Drop D is fun, and so is rocksmith. And
Yeah.
sometimes I work this thing out, and shit's retarded easy. I just don't have that ball that I want.
Yeah.
That I want so bad. And I miss it, and I go for it, and it's just like, oh yeah, I only got an E or a drop D.
Yeah, I mean that happens. I told you as soon as you hit a B, you're going to fall in love, and as soon as you play some heavier metal type shit, you're gonna have fun.
Man, I try not to just chug on that open beat, but it fucking happens.
It's heavy. That's why metal is so fucking fun. It's heavy.
It is, and it's just all open beats and a couple accents. Just dun 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 dun.
Sometimes, yeah. Unless you're playing like Cannibal Corpse or.
Not all the time. Not all the time. There's a lot of times I'll catch myself just hammering the fucking beat, open beat,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just doing shit too, but like, I'm like, man, this feels so basic, but it sounds so fucking metal.
All right.
Also, I think they should have Bill Cipher for what you're talking about. They should have Bill Cipher for Gravity Falls.
They might be incorporating Gravity Falls characters soon, but they're doing their experimental shit.
Well, that would be an experiment.
Right.
They do stuff as
They're rotating
consolidated,
characters
right.
in and out to see who works and who's overpowered and who needs tuning. And
But so the thing is I was watching Gravity Falls. I watched Uncle Stan knock some shit. I was like, dude, this is all the characters in that game. I was like, well, what would how would Uncle Stan hold the candle against any of these guys without any like powers or like real attacks? Like he's a basic fucking punch and kick fighter at that point, But Uncle Stan would be a pretty badass character if they could figure out how to do that. Could say.
well, I mean,
but who would make a badass character from Gravity Falls? Fucking Bill Cipher, the Pyramid.
yeah.
And he would hold the candle, to the gameplay and the other characters. And he has a set of powers. And yes, if you were to take all of his powers from the cartoon, he's way overpowered. But guess what? He only gets like so many attacks.
Yeah.
So he becomes levels with everybody else.
But hey, grab your stuff, take your shower, smoke your bowl. I've got stream up.
Right meow.
Okay.
Oh shit, yeah.
All right. Just call me when you're about to head over. Oh. Sorry about that. Had the cousin call. He's probably going to come over here in a little bit. So.
Apparatus of worker rights that ends up being deferent to an authoritarian government. Likewise, your argument that China protects workers' rights is laughable. Foxconn workers are paid more in Taiwan than in China. China has historically been perfectly comfortable that their workers slave away at incredibly low wages because they benefit from foreign investment. That is no
Oh, but see, here's a thing. Moppin considers Taiwan part of China.
things, but what proletarian state it is not. That is capitalism. China is just state capitalism. It is the entire apparatus of a market economy run by private actors, except some of them are also controlled by authoritarian unelected government. There is nothing socialistic about China, not in any way, shape, or form. Even the individual act of forming unions is banned by the government. And union organizers face a wide variety of actions. That's one union. But I'm going to let you finish that one. Yeah, they have one union, not independent unions. It doesn't really count. It's a state union. Do you know what the term control opposition is? Oh, I think I'll start with you. So control opposition is when you have a state with over 1 billion workers who have less worker rights than their neighboring countries, and if they want to get more rights, they have to subscribe to a union that is controlled by the state, which has a material interest in keeping them from developing workers' rights. That is what a controlled opposition is. Hey, don't like the working conditions in China? Why don't you join the glorious Chinese Communist Party's single labor union, where you can absolutely definitely improve the material conditions of your class?
Yeah. Oh, you want workers' rights? You want a union? Okay, well, join the one that's run by the fucking government then. Like, honestly.
Yeah, I am finished, actually.
Wait. We were at the 24 minute?
For example, Huawei Technologies is technically legal for workers in China, independent workers who has one union. I'm going to let you finish. I don't interrupt. Yeah, they have one union, not independent unions. It doesn't really count if it's a state union. Do you know what the term controlled opposition is?
Government pretty much owns everything.
Yeah, I am finished, actually.
Okay. Well, I don't agree with you about how you characterize state capitalism. I think state capitalism is Saudi Arabia.
You're not a socialist.
I'm sorry, may I finish my point?
Sorry, my apologies.
Saudi Arabia, the government pretty much owns everything. But all it does is make sure that profits flow into the hands of the royal family. It's a market economy, except the state is heavily involved. You can say that about Singapore, for example. South Korea, there's a huge amount of government involved in Taiwan. And it's interesting, the libertarian law points to this free market paradise. Well, no, the state is heavily involved. It's just half of the state trying to benefit a small elite class. Kind of Bonapartism, according to Marx. But the way you describe things in China, I see the Chinese Communist Party as an organization that has rapidly improved the lives of millions of workers. It's done so by controlling the economy. You can point to many bad things. I don't deny those bad things. Corruption is a big problem in the country. Many of the folks who are in the countryside who have running water, electricity, and in the cities and have been very badly treated by employers, especially in the regions where there are a little more free market. No one would deny that China has a lot of room to improve on these things. But I don't think that, by definition, makes it capitalist, right? China executes billionaires. Very closely controls the corporations. You should read about Qingtao culture, where corporations that have been caught polluting, they're forced to go on national television and apologize to the country in exchange for a short prison sentence.
Do you know
Capitalists of China live in terror.
Do you know the terms
Chinese
for
Communist
the
Party.
private market being owned by the state authority?
The government controls the corporations. The United States, the corporations control the government. Very different situation.
Do you know what the technical term is for an economy where the private sector is rolled into the authority of the state? It's fascism. We're talking about, yeah, we're talking about fascism. The only thing you've been able to praise about the Chinese government is that they elevated.
He's correct. Now, I'll let you in on a little secret, y'all. I like to play like I don't read theory and shit. Except I do. I've read a lot of theory. Like, a good amount. Okay, so I actually got distracted. Sorry, I have to do a thing because I get a lot of spam in my Google Docs, so I don't want anything to show up that would get my channel fucked. So I have a lot of work to do on this document still. But if you look at everything on here, the number of sources, some of them there's 44 total. Except for this one, I've actually also read that. I have read everything on here a few times. And this is just Marxist theory. This doesn't include all the anarchist theory that I have either read or listened to through audiobook. On top of that, I've studied the history of fascism. Because you need to know your enemy. And Vosh is completely correct here. It's why I said it from the beginning. The economic prescription of fascism is when state and corporate power are rolled together. He said when the power of corporations is controlled by the authority of the state. Pretty much the same thing. Just more wordy.
You're just defending China on the premise of its authoritarianism. That's it. You're arguing like, well, it elevated the country and made them wealthier. You can make that argument for Adolf Hitler, the blood spoils of the war, elevated material wealth of his country too. That is irrelevant when we're talking about the extent to which China is actually a socialist country. Every time you defend it, all you're doing is defending the extent to which the state has the ability to interfere in the market. That's not socialism. That's in socialism. The workers aren't elevated in China. America has more worker rights than China does. I say with full and 100% confidence that the United States of America is more of a proletarian state than China is. And that's really saying something, because I am not a big fan of America. This is my issue with like the tanky white people. I don't think you give a fuck about socialism. I don't think you give a fuck about the workers. What I do think is that you hate America, which walks in line with you working for RT and having been on Rankin State TV before. I think you're more interested in propping up state actors that oppose American geopolitical interests than you are in actually making life better for anybody. And if that's actually your interest, if you just want to go full fucking anti-America, that's totally okay, my dude. I'm not a huge fan of America either. But don't dress it up as you being a fucking socialist. Don't denigrate my social movement with your nonsense fucking fascist defending American anti-exceptionalist dogma. Why don't you be honest with your just go on your AETV and talk about how American like devils are going to threaten the entire world with like the well-being of their children or something. Alright, well,
okay, well, I'll respond to three of those points. First of all, the work that I do as an RT reporter and my coworkers do is something I'm very proud of, and I find it despicable that he would repeat State Department talking points against us at a time where freedom of speech is under attack, freedom of the press is under attack. This is something I'm very, very disappointed with. I'm not here as a representative of RT or many different viewpoints represented on RT. I'm not going to dignify that with further response. I'm very, very disappointed to see both the heart of this. Secondly, so am I a tanky or not? First, I wasn't a tanky because I didn't go out the door. Now I'm back to being a tanky because I like China. But again, when I start talking about Nelson Mandela and Black Panther, all of a sudden I'm not a tanky. I think the definition of tanky is very fluid in this conversation. Second of all, I consider myself the most patriotic person around. It is not in the interest of the United States to have a new war with China. It is not in the interest of the United States to have a new war with Iran or with Russia or any of these countries. Wars are devastating. We need international cooperation right now, especially against the pandemic. And right now, especially the anti-Chinese hysteria is very, very frightening. The idea that instead of admitting that we should be working with them to fight against the pandemic, our leaders are whipping up every extreme, unproven allegation against China is very, very disappointing to me. I want to see the United States that gets more better with China, with Russia, with Venezuela, with Cuba, with every country around the world, Vietnam, every country building socialism, but building an independent economy. I want to see friendship and cooperation. So if you describe me as someone who hates average Americans and all that, I think socialism and having our government control the economy and fight for the people, I think that would be in the Bonapartism is when capitalism is in a state of crisis, one section of the middle class utilizing the state to bring mass death and destruction to beat down sections of the population in the hopes of stabilizing the economy. And represented the concentration camps, broke the labor movement, and he did not control means of production. I mean, it's largely a private economy. And this, mass killing of workers was it was a mass regime of political repression. The same thing was done in Italy with Mussolini. The same thing was done in Spain with Franco. Fascism is a form of right-wing Bonapartism, rooted in anti-communism, rooted in the idea that the commies can't do better than the commies. It's right-wing and crafted by the United States. And IBM,
Wait. Hold on. I'm sorry. Wait, that's a little too far back. I think. Do you see how much this fuck has to lie? Do you see it? Please tell me you see that. You said fascism is just simply authoritarianism. No! No, he was actually very specific. No, that's a consequence of fascism. That is not what fascism is. That's a thing that leads into fascism easier, but it's not what fascism is. If you understand Marxism, like Marx actually wrote anything about fascism, it didn't exist when he was alive, you fucking moron. That's actually incorrect. He only started doing that after the negotiations between him and Stalin stalled, because he thought Stalin was too greedy and kept wanting more and more and more and more every time they would go back and forth on stuff. So it's propped up by the US.
Try and paint people who want peace and cooperation with China or Russia as if we are the equivalent Nazis. It's just, that's historical revision.
So that's a nice misdirection. First of all, I never said fascism was authoritarianism. I said that economically it was blowing the power of the private sector into the state, which is the definition, and that is what China does pretty effectively. I noticed, by the way, that you described socialism as the government fighting for the people. Interesting, because National Socialists describe it the exact same way. The government doesn't have shit to do with socialism.
Ooh, yeah, that's actually true also. He just doesn't miss in this.
The workers, my dude. I don't know why you have so little faith in the average proletarian, but your constant deference back in the authoritarian state to lead the vanguards, very strange to me. I don't know at what point I indicated that I went to war with China. It's a really weird departure from our conversation. Obviously not. But you claim, it's really funny to me that you claim that that it was disgusting that I would attack the defense of China during a time where our free speech was being threatened by fascists, when the free speech of billions of people in China is being threatened every single day with their government and our social credit system. The Uyghur Muslims are being genocided as we speak. And for you to make the argument while defending that country that I'm the one impugning freedom of speech by criticizing you for your authoritarian tendencies is fucking disgusting. I also like that you refer to an accusation being a McCarthyism.
Okay, so what I don't get is, if you remember, we went over the Jason Unruh Caleb Maupin debate, and at one point Unruh said, keep making those cute little faces, that's exactly what Vosh did to you, or your cute little Vosh faces like he did to you, or whatever, something like that. But Vosh didn't really, he was looking back and forth at chat and reacting to Caleb saying dumb shit, but if you've noticed Caleb Maupin's facial expressions the entire time, every time he gets called out for being dishonest, he just gives this little fucking smirk, like, yeah. He looks so fucking smug. When he said, when he said that we should, or that Vosh would have him punched in the face, maybe Vosh wouldn't, but I fucking would. I'd do it personally. Maupin can't fight. And he's a fascist. It's morally okay.
criticizing China when all of my criticisms
It's self-defense.
were that they weren't elevating the workers. It's an interesting criticism for a McCarthyite to make, considering my accusations that it isn't socialist, that it would like it to be socialist. I don't recall McCarthy sitting up there on the bench in court and saying, I have the names of 100 communists who work in Hollywood and proof they aren't communist enough. I don't remember that part, but again, history is not my strong suit. Yeah, I guess like at the end of the day, like nothing you responded with has anything to do with the material conditions of the workers in China, which tells me where your headspace is at. Why not just be anti-American? Like that's so much easier. I'm anti-American. I just think there are people here I care about, and stuff. What are you gonna do? Probably better that America be socialist than not, so I gotta work in this, purview. But I don't know, dude. Just like nothing you're saying is socialist. Like here's a question. I guess we're good at that. But I have a question for you, okay? Like, do you not think that the fact that basically everything is under the heel of the state in China might be precluding the ability of the workers to actually engage in socialism, especially considering there are independent leftist organizations in China that have been suppressed by the government because it doesn't coincide with their top-down authoritarian approach? Yeah, absolutely.
Fucking bars.
Okay. Well, I think you sound very McCarthyist now when you make me say I'm simply anti-American, I simply hate America, that I'm motivated by hatred of the country that I grew up in, of the country that I love and don't see bragging.
He just said, why don't you just be anti-American? And he has to go off on this. Nah, you're saying that I hate America, that I'm provoked by a hatred of America, that I hate the country that I grew up in. Yeah! I fucking hate it here, dude. He's not even listening. Of course he's not. He's white. God damn it. CIA, CIA, CIA. May I respond, Smuggy? Nah. No, you're wrong there. I've never actually read all the comments here, all the chat. Oh my god.
The government has nothing to do with socialism. Well, that's nice, but around the world, historically, when workers have risen up, the main thing they try to do is take control of state power. I do not agree with that. I respect your right to disagree with that, but you can rewind the
This is just propaganda.
state revolution, rewards writing for thoughts. I mean, that's
God damn it.
the proletariat seizes the public power. I mean, that's generally what the understanding of socialism is. Your definition of fascism seems pretty clear. You say it's when the government is controlling corporations, then it becomes authoritarianism, and we'll know I mischaracterized it. Your definition of fascism seems quite all over the place. Specifically, some of what he said about social credit. I'm not trying to avoid it. I'm not here to say China did nothing wrong.
Yeah, how the fuck is his definition all over the place when he gave one definition? What?
Oh, I mean, sure. I think it's again, like, I gave a very specific definition of fascism twice now. So yeah, I don't know about that. Also, the workers haven't seized control of the state apparatus of China. A very small group of autocrats have, of billionaires and state and private officials. Do you think like the workers are in charge of the Chinese Communist Party?
So, I mean, as far as is China doing wrong things in those regions? Possibly. But we have to remember that so many of the things that have been going around on social media about that have been debunked. I mean, there's a video going around reporting to show police beating up a man calling him the Quran. Turns out it's from Indonesia. CNN.
Do we really want to go down this road?
Sorry, man, I did not interrupt. Of CNN was being interviewed. She said that her child died in the hospital. Well, it turns out her child is alive. The hospital records completely contradict everything she said. That's all it has on CNN. Hashtag still no info, which was this popular hashtag listing people who had disappeared. Investigations showed that a number of those people couldn't be identified. However, there were a number of those people on that list who actually had never even been detained and were in their homes, right? Now, I'm not saying China never did.
Which, yeah, no, all of that was debunked, by the way. You can look into it. I'm not going to go over all of that. But, yeah. Wait, that's a long one. Only upon workers' incessant urging have some district-level unions supported workers' requests to form unions. Worker complaints about management interference and unionization have generally been met by indifference or hostility from upper-level unions, as with Jessic case. Many companies have had a free hand to take retaliatory actions against workers endeavoring to unionize, such as assigning them less desirable job duties, suspending their duties, and demoting their positions.
I know the war makers lie. I know about the Nariya testimony, the daughter of the Kuwaiti monarch who weighty royal family member crying in front of Congress saying, oh, they're taking babies out of incubators to build a case against for the war against Iraq. It turned out to be a total lie. And our government and our media is trying to demonize countries. They often say things that are not true. And that's just the reality. So I'm suspicious of some of that. Now, the social credit system, there's been a lot written about how the way mainstream media in the USA portrays it. It's not completely accurate. The Washington Post has run articles. There are many sources even within the mainstream press that say that narrative that you get is not completely right. One of the main reasons the social credit system is set up is because there are people in China who've been convicted of crimes and have been levied fines by courts, and the government has no way of collecting that money, so it bans them from travel. It says you can't book a flight until you get on a plane. Well, in the United States, if you get fined by court and you're convicted of a crime, you're fined by court, and you don't pay it, you can go to jail. The idea that people are barred from getting on planes simply because they do something critical to the state, I think, based on what I've read, is not completely accurate. That's not to say I haven't done anything wrong, okay? Again, I'm American. I love my country, contrary to your McCarthy's accusations. I love my country. I want things to be better here, and I don't want to impose the Chinese system here. I simply want international cooperation and friendship, not McCarthyism, not war hysteria, not polarization.
So I noticed that you completely ignored the is the Chinese Communist Party democratically controlled by workers question. That's okay. We both know the answer. I love that your denial of the Uyghur Holocaust right now because it's. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Denial. Oh yeah. No. Oh, I have flaws in the narrative. Flaws in the. Oh, I've heard that before too. Hey.
Yeah, no, it is. It's soft denialism, not hard denialism.
Did you know that when the Soviet Union originally arrived at the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp?
Now he goes on a thing to show how, yeah, like it gets a little. It sounds a little sussy until he wraps it up. So.
Slow down there, Malcolm. Did you know that the plaque that they originally posted suggested that 6 million died there, when in reality the updated number later said 1.47 million? Did you know that there was an order for a metal door that went to a camp that didn't actually have any door frames that could fit? Seems almost like it might have been bought by another group trying to incriminate that. By the way, I'm not saying that the Nazis didn't do anything, mind you. I'm just saying that there was undeniably a lot of war propaganda following, World War II that we should probably examine critically before we, fully address any of the accusations here. Dude, you literally are doing this just because there are a couple. Just because you're questioning the official narrative. Yeah.
And you started this by saying you don't equate people like Nazis.
Wait, no, I don't equate all. I don't equate all tankies to Nazis. Can you let me finish?
And at the time that happened, mainstream media in the United States
Are you okay?
No, of course he can't, and then he starts molding for fucking ever. Mopping. Mopping. No, it actually wasn't. It was anarchists.
So, as I was saying, you're not denying the Uyghur genocide. You're just taking a couple of misplaced, like the factoids that turned out to be incorrect. Holy shit, my dude!
Yeah, he doesn't want to continue the line of discussion because it exposes how much of a disgusting piece of shit he is. Kind of like the next thing we're going to go over, which is this.
I can't just let you engage in, genocide denialism and walk away from it. My apologies. I'll be nicer, but I do have to finish this one point, okay? So, often when defending an authoritarian regime against a genocide accusation, it's more optically and rhetorically efficacious not to outright deny its existence, but rather to draw up some questions, like, hey, there is a lot of propaganda here. Maybe possibly there are some state actors who, and then by doing that, you introduce the seeds of doubt that allow other people to engage in outright denial. Now, I feel comfortable in making that comparison here, because as Nazi Germany was a fascist society that engaged in genocide, by every reasonable economic definition.
That was weird.
China is also a fascist society currently engaging in genocide. Though the societies are not exactly the same, there are many, many differences between the two. When we talk about a top-down, authoritarian, xenophobic, ethno-state-like society that imposes states' will on the people and then promises that the glory of the people will be brought about by the sovereignty and the power of the authoritarian, unelected state, I think a little bit maybe, and that's kind of the argument that you made as well, my dude. You haven't really made any arguments about the autonomy of the worker or the coalition to commodity form, every word out of your mouth to defend China has been defending authoritarianism, which makes me think you're not really a socialist. I read you this passage from Karl Marx on the third address in May 1871. But the working class cannot simply lay
Oh, that's the fucking speaker.
hold of the ready-made state machinery and wield it for its own purposes. The centralized state power with its ubiquitous organs of standing army, police, bureaucracy, clergy, and judicature, organs off after the plan of the systemic and hierarchical division of labor, originates from the days of absolute monarchy, serving nascent middle-class society as a mighty weapon in its struggle against feudalism. Or, in essence, the worker seizing the state is not nearly enough. It's not even close to being nearly enough. All you're doing is replicating the previous system of government, except with different people in charge. So we need a more substantive change, which China has not engaged in to any extent whatsoever.
Well, when the Iraq War was getting going, as I mentioned before, CNN played this testimony from a member of the Kuwaiti royal family saying that Iraqi soldiers were taking babies from incubators, and thousands of people didn't buy it, and they marched and protested against the Gulf War that took place. According to you, they must be all Holocaust deniers because they didn't believe mainstream media saying something against the regime we don't like. That's just...
And then there's a major reach. So you kind of get the general vibe of Moppin. We don't need to actually finish this. What we do need to jump into is this. DL, Nick, member 1 and member 2. They're supposed to be anonymous, so... Alright, there's a... It's long. I can summarize the entire thing. So... Summary and information for the reader. Bringing forward this statement was not easy for any of us, but there was no alternative to speaking the truth. It's our responsibility to stop abuse of power against comrades, those of us who want to fight for the ideas of constructive, optimistic socialism and anti-imperialism, and who have contributed to the organization Center of Political Innovation, have been betrayed by Caleb Maupin. Over the years, he has subjected members of CPI to various forms of abuse and exploitation. He pushed his sexual desires on members who had considered him to be a leading comrade. He brought his sexual impulses into political organizing. Caleb pushed a member out of CPI and its predecessor, Students and Youth for a New America, SYNA, after she made clear that she would not do sexual favors for him. Caleb paid a member for sex who he knew was economically desperate, and then went on to push them out of the group and slander them. Caleb Maupin has also targeted people in their teens with manipulative cult tactics in an effort to exploit their labor so he can build himself up off their hard work and sacrifice, and then would go on to slander them behind their backs if they didn't do exactly what he wanted. The abuses Caleb Maupin committed could have also done tremendous damage to all of us by discrediting all who associated with our political position. Well, you're all fascists because you believe what Caleb Maupin believes. So, your political position is bullshit. If you believe what he's saying, and you believe him to be a comrade socialist leader before all of this, then no, I don't care about your politics. I don't see them in a positive light. Despite these revelations, now is not a time to despair. It is a time to fight harder for optimistic socialism and anti-imperialism. Excuse me. It's a difficult reality for many to face, but Caleb Maupin's primary concern has not been advancing the cause of anti-imperialism. His primary concern has been self-gain at the expense of others. That's the problem with your ideology. However, our goal is not to make an overly simplified picture of Caleb Maupin or to demonize him unjustly. Our statements give credit where it is due, but at the same time, they demonstrate his abusive behavior clearly. The following statements. If the case, if you'd like to get in contact or have any questions for CPI stuff, which is actually disbanded now. Member 2A statement under the header Caleb Maupin's sexual misconduct. When I first met Caleb Maupin, I was 19 years old, living on my own for the first time and paying my rent with my own paychecks while going to school full-time. I was in a very vulnerable place socially and financially. At the same time, though, I considered myself to be more mature than my peers because of how independent I was compared to my other political science classmates and because I was one of the only communists. 19. When I met him, a prominent YouTuber and accomplished journalist over over a decade older than me, who treated me like his intellectual equal, he had me feel intelligent and important, especially since he would frequently take me out to dinner where we'd discuss our political ambitions and the think tank he wanted me to help him build, the Center for Political Innovation. Beginning in 2019, we would have dinner together at least once a month. 2019. How old was Moppin in 2019? How old is Caleb Moppin? He's 40? He's 40? Oh my god. Okay. I had to know. Yeah, he may feel intelligent, especially for that. Beginning in 2019, we would have dinner together. Beginning in 2019, so 4 years ago. So he was in his 30s, late 30s. Beginning in 2019, we would have dinner together at least once a month, and sometimes during those dinners, he would bring up what I assumed at the time was his academic interest in corporal punishment, especially spanking. As time went on, we became closer and closer friends, which led to him confiding in me in 2020 during the beginning of the COVID pandemic that his academic special interest was in fact a sexual one. Of course it was. He even told me that he would engage other people in conversations about corporal punishment and spanking because it turned him on to do so. When we became closer friends in 2021, he finally admitted to me that he would masturbate to the thought of roping unsuspecting people, especially women, into these conversations about their experiences with being spanked and other forms of physical abuse. Honestly, pretty fucking gross. Like, going out of your way to rope women into conversations to be able to masturbate to them later. Like, it's weird. I tend to be a very open and sexually liberal person, so I don't really mind when my friends discuss their sex lives with me in a platonic way. As a matter of fact, I was honored that Caleb supposedly trusted me enough that he was willing to share that part of his life with me. However, I was still under the impression that he was interested in me as a platonic friend and comrade, nothing else, which is why I continued to participate in CPI's conferences and events, including facilitating CPI's California Conference Forum in September 2021, which entailed Caleb and I traveling together and sharing a hotel room and transportation. Back then, I was working for a math tutoring company. Caleb knew that this job was incredibly important to me and that I needed the income to pay off my student loans and other financial expenses. I only agreed to go to California with Caleb under the condition that I would be able to work on the Monday that we left because I had already been assigned a shift that day. When I first asked him, he told me it wouldn't be an issue because the conference was from Friday to Sunday, so that Monday I could work after we checked out of the hotel. Nonetheless, when Monday rolled around, Caleb insisted that he wanted to have lunch at a Mexican restaurant before we left and refused to get me a separate Uber to get to the airport early to work. Since I couldn't complete my shift in the restaurant, I ended up missing it and losing my job as a result. Even though I told him this is exactly what would happen and explained to him the many reasons why I couldn't afford to lose my job when I did get fired, Caleb insisted that I will be okay and that we, himself and CPI, will not abandon you. Little did I know that when Caleb reassured me he'd find another job, he didn't necessarily mean another tutoring gig. Yeah, he wanted to force her out of her job to make her dependent on him. And then receipts. Remember on Monday when I said that missing that shift might cost me my job? I was unfortunately correct. I'll call you when I get home tonight. Okay, I'm really sorry, Caleb. I'll do my best to find another job. Oh my god. Yeah, this is the saddest part. Why are you apologizing? You're doing your best. I'm really sorry this happened. I'll try to help you however I can. You'll be okay. You are safe. How will your dad's credit being affected prevent him from making mortgage payments? He's on a mortgage that has some kind of variable rate, so if his credit goes up, his payments go. If his credit goes down, his payments go up. I don't know the exact particulars, but it was one of those predatory mortgages in the early 2000s. Well, you should talk to him soon. Try not to catastrophize and say one thing necessarily leads to another. You need a new job. That's what we're dealing with. Okay, you're right. I need to take a step back and breathe. I have BPD and OCD, so catastrophizing tends to be my brain's default mode. Just because he's correct about this doesn't mean a whole lot, honestly. I'm not ready to talk to my dad yet, though. I can't even stop crying, let alone hold a coherent conversation with the most judgmental person in my life. Keaton assures me he's on his way to you right now. It's okay to let your emotions out. This is a big loss. I'm about to go out to see him. Thank you for helping to comfort me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, this is manipulative shit right here. We're your friends, and we will not abandon you. Spoilers. That's very reassuring to hear. At least I'm not in this alone. The main conflict between Caleb and I that arose after I lost my job was this. I started living in Jersey City with the John Brown Volunteers in August 2021, so I'd been paying $200 a week in rent to Caleb to cover my portion of the $600 a week hotel cost, which is so fucking much. Before I moved in, Caleb had been paying the exact same hotel rate for only Joey and Keaton to live there, but he told me I had to pay a third of the rent when I moved in because he was supposedly paying the rest of all our expenses. Despite this agreement, I was paying the majority of the household expenses for the John Brown Volunteers because the only money we received to support ourselves was the half of our canvassing money we kept each day. Most of the time, we'd make about $30 to $100 per day total. So when I lost my math tutoring job, Caleb still expected me to continue financially supporting the JBV, while I also had to continue to pay for my student loans, which meant I desperately needed another source of income. Caleb expected me to spend even more time canvassing for the JBVs after I lost my job, though, because he thought canvassing was a sufficient way of making money for myself in the organization, even though it's literally never enough money to make money for yourself. It makes money barely for an organization. Canvassing is a small effort. I could have canvassed less so I could get another job, or he could have stopped asking me to pay that third of the rent since it seemed unnecessary before I'd started living there. But part of what Caleb wanted was for me to spend less time away from him and CPI, basically giving every spare second I had to being a dutiful member of the group. Yep. The day after I lost my job at the math tutoring company, I told Caleb I wanted to try to find at least another part-time job. However, his reaction to that suggestion made it very clear that he didn't even see it as an option. He told me that I couldn't have 1 foot living biologically and 1 foot in the revolution. What the fuck is he even talking about there? This quote, which was part of a much longer lecture he gave about how I needed to devote even more time to our political work if I truly considered myself serious about it, was very hurtful considering I had just given up my job for Caleb and his organization. Yet just treating the Center for Political Innovation as the main aspect of my life wasn't enough for him. Caleb made it clear that if I really cared about him and my other comrades, CPI would have to become my life. Number 2, we should talk later, but basically it all gets down to this. You're in a situation where you know your housing and food will be taken care of. You will not be left out to dry. However, you have some rather unrealistic expectations about other stuff you insist is absolutely need. Your life is your life. Your decisions are your decisions, but you need to figure out how dedicated you are to communism, and if you are ready to leave your old life behind or not. You have 1 foot in living biologically and 1 foot in the revolution, and that's a very hard way to live. I can help you and be your friend, but I cannot solve all your problems. I cannot make hard choices for you. And then this extremely weird, okay, why is that backwards? Thing. A Bible quote. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Anyone who welcomes you welcomes me, and anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet as a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person as a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. And if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will certainly not lose their reward. That's a really weird thing to say. Essentially, Maupin is saying he's like Jesus here. And that if you love your family more than you love him, and if you try and devote more time to your family than you do to him, you don't deserve a reward and you're a bad person. Bringing the jacket. See you at Wendy's at 1 p.m. Spent a long time thinking about you last night. I know these are very hard times for you. Sorry, I'm probably overthinking all this. I just care about you a lot. Spent a long time in prayer. Talk to you soon. I do understand what you're saying, although with all due respect, I think there are certain issues you've had the privilege of not having to deal with, and those pressures are something I'm more than happy to take care of on my own. The reality of it is that I can't just abandon my family. I don't have the privilege of doing that, because I've been their rock for my entire life, and they can't do certain things without me. I know it's probably difficult to deal with me having those other obligations, but they are obligations, not choices. There are certain things in my life that aren't optional, and I'm sorry that they interfere with my communist activism. If I had the option of forgetting them or leaving them behind, trust me, I would. It would certainly make my life a whole lot easier. Keep in mind, they're a subject of abuse, but they're still kind of a piece of shit. Oh, if I just had the option of leaving my family behind, I fucking would, because it would make my life easier. Like, no, what kind of communist would even entertain that notion? No. No. That's fucked. But, notice, I can't just abandon my family in response to this fucking weird-ass Bible quote. I'm not asking you to abandon your family. Yeah, you were. That's what this fucking Bible quote is. We can talk later. There are some things I cannot offer you. I understand. We'll talk later. Therefore, I ended up doing sex work so I could make enough to support our household and pay off my debts while still having enough time to canvass full-time for the JBVs. I distinctly remember telling Caleb that it seemed like sex work was my only way out of this delicate financial situation. His response was simply that he respects my decision. Yeah, if she'd have gone and done a regular job, he wouldn't have, so it's not really respecting her decision. It's the only option that she felt she had. So that's coerced. Okay? And she still had to pay him $200 a month. In retrospect, it seemed like the real reason he didn't mind me doing sex work while I was living in CPI's New Jersey housing is because he probably wanted to become one of my clients. For what it's worth, after I left the JBV house, he eventually did become a client of mine. Caleb kicked me out of the John Brown Volunteers in the beginning of November 2021 after I relapsed on heroin in late October. So, going after addicts and forcing them back into that situation, essentially. Why? I told you no! At that point, I took some time away from the organization, only attended a few smaller events, and stayed at my fiance's apartments to focus on my recovery and getting clean again. Good. While by that time I had started my own math tutoring business, and had my own students, I was still doing sex work as a side hustle to supplement my income because I didn't have enough students to cover the revenue I'd lost once I stopped canvassing entirely and had to pay my own utilities again. In December 2021, Caleb asked me to replace his former dominatrix, Miss Lucy. I agreed to do so for $250 per session because I did need the money, and it felt like if I said no, I'd be even more isolated from the rest of CPI than I already was as a result of my relapse. By that time, in mid-December, I was clean again, which Caleb insisted upon in order for us to see each other. Yet he was still apparently lying to the rest of CPI that I continued to be in the midst of my drug addiction. He did this while saying to my face that he didn't want me going to CPI events or his birthday party so I didn't run into his wife. I don't know how you pronounce this name. I am sorry. No, I'm not going to try. I don't want to fuck it up. Because he thought it would make things awkward. I later learned from other CPI members that this was a common tactic of his, isolating someone from the group through rumors and hearsay, in order to make sure I'd interact with other CPI members in case I decided to tell them about our arrangement. Truth be told, I was terribly afraid of anyone else finding it. Anyone else in the organization finding out I was doing this with them. Yeah, I bet you were. I was afraid if I told anyone, they wouldn't believe me, and if he told someone, I'd be shunned and ostracized. I saw Caleb as the dominant a few times in December 2021. He essentially paid me to reenact his childhood corporal punishment as a fatherly figure to discipline him. Included in this arrangement was the understanding that he'd also compensate me for the several hours he spent sexting me about his kink when we weren't seeing each other in person. He texted me so often I eventually had to ask him to stop because I was getting notifications from his sexually explicit messages while I was teaching my students. However, he only paid me for our in-person meetings and never even mentioned billing for my texting labor again, despite that first agreement. So, a small piece of this so far, not even the full bit of just one member statement, and you can already see a pattern of abuse, manipulation, and labor exploitation. Wage theft. So, yeah, anyone who has ever thought Maupin was an actual fucking communist has never believed in communism. They don't believe in it. After a couple of months of constant communication and a few punishment sessions, he abruptly stopped speaking to me, acting as if I suddenly didn't exist. I was very confused and hurt by this, because I truly thought that by agreeing to do sex work for him, I had won his good graces so we can continue to be friends. He's going after people with mental illness, drug addictions they've been trying to fight, who are economically in a desperate situation. Or, if they're in a decent situation, arranging it to where they're in a desperate situation. And, you know, some of these people are just stupid. But he's also going after youth. So, yeah. I knew he didn't want me in the group afterwards, but I thought at the time that he at least appreciated my contributions thus far and respected me as a person. Think you can hold me accountable for my feelings about that book? Absolutely. We'll moderate your detention assignment. You have to write, I must accept my... Oh yeah, this is the sexting. Because, you know, they didn't record any of the actual in-person meetings, but, yeah. You have to write, I must accept my punishment. I need your discipline to grow and be safe 100 times. This is what you were going to say to me when I ask, why are you being punished, Caleb? If you get that answer wrong, then you clearly haven't learned that lesson, and you'll be punished even more. Thank you, Member 2. Can you remind me why the boatmaster needed to spank the last duck every day? To keep him from getting lost and hurting himself. The one time he decides to avoid his punishment, he is isolated from his family and almost killed. If the boatmaster doesn't spank the duck will be like a sailboat without a rudder, directionless, alone, and with nowhere to go. And then he loved the text. The boatmaster was keeping the ducks safe, encouraging them to hurry back. That hard spank with the stick was given in love. I'm so sorry for questioning it, Member 2. I know I need to get punished. You must be very disappointed in me. If you were my teacher, would I get sent for the paddle for this? Yes, you would. Not because I'm angry with you, but because, like Ping, you still haven't learned why you need an authority to guide you with a firm hand. It's the sexual pathology of the authoritarian. They're like, yes, I have to be
I have to be told what to do all the time, every time, and if I don't listen, I must be punished with corporal punishment.
Nothing against people who are masochists, or, you know, subs that are masochists. But, like, don't also have an authoritarian political ideology. Yeah. You are smart enough to understand these things, so I have very high expectations of you. Those expectations help you become better, and my discipline helps you meet those expectations. Understood?
I need to get a spanking for my little attitude problem. You should probably double the lines I need to write.
You'll be getting double the spankings instead. I'm a proponent of learning while doing. Maybe if you experience Ping's punishment for yourself, you'll lose your attitude.
Is it going to hurt to sit down after?
Yes, it will. But you'll still have to sit up straight and deal with the pain. Remember that every time you think of questioning my authority, if I see you slouching or changing your posture because you're in pain, after I spank you, you'll just get paddled instead.
Disrespecting that book is kind of like disrespecting you. I must respect authority and discipline.
Oh my god. Good posture is essential to good health and productivity. Exactly. Disrespecting any form of authority and discipline is disrespecting me, and I am not forgiving or kind when I am disrespected.
My dad should have put me over his knee more often, taught me not to have this disrespectful attitude. You should spank me really hard. Am I going to have to eat soap?
And then he loved the disrespecting any form of authority and discipline. Unfortunately, I was wrong. The reason he stopped speaking to me was because apparently another group member had come forward with their own allegations against him, and he assumed that I was the one who leaked it. Even though he'd already told other CPI members that I was a drug addict who couldn't participate in group events before this, after member 1 came forward, he began telling people I was dangerous and two-faced, so that no one believed the allegations. Of course, from my perspective, I had done everything he'd asked me to and kept a secret to protect myself, so when he ghosted me suddenly in the middle of January, I felt completely betrayed, and you should have moved on. You should have moved the fuck on. He really doesn't seem like an interesting person to be friends with. It's the gossip and the shared authoritarian brain, I guess. And then, yeah, this is to Keaton Mansfield, but this is...
She's rather two-faced.
Member 2?
Member 2. We flirt texted many times. Always consensual.
Because that's not a weird thing to just... Isn't she part of CPI now? December. Keep this in mind, this is in December.
As far as I know, she never told me there was any problem. I'm going to pretend this never happened and cut her off.
Strange.
We flirt texted on Wednesday, and it was a lot more than verbal abuse. This is dumb shit.
Nevertheless, I still publicly supported Caleb and CPI. To this day, I haven't said a single disparaging thing about Caleb in public. To the contrary, throughout these past few years, I often defended Caleb against online attacks on his character, even if they came from other principled communists. The last straw for me, what finally forced me to stop publicly aligning myself with Caleb once and for all, was his response to Yankee Tanky, aka Joey's, video exposing another CPI member, Keaton's, inappropriate behaviors within the group. Caleb sent me the link to that video after weeks of completely ignoring him, keep me anonymous while discussing what happened, and I myself had complained to Caleb about many of Keaton's actions as they were happening while we were still living in the JVV house. But Caleb's response was always to dismiss my concerns or reassure me he'd talk to Keaton. When I reminded Caleb about the truth of what Joey was saying and how I'd made these complaints to Caleb myself, he lashed out at me, accusing me of being obsessed with Keaton and demanding to know why I was so preoccupied with a former fling from last summer. This temper tantrum of his and the subsequent attacks on my character throughout that conversation was when I decided enough was enough. Clearly, my dedication to socialism and CPI throughout the years and loyalty to Caleb was no longer relevant. These incidents, as well as some conversations I had later with other former CPI members, have me fully convinced that Caleb Maupin is not qualified to lead any political organization, period. If he could callously abuse, manipulate, disregard, and shun a determined member
and close friend. After almost half a decade of loyal service, there's no telling what else he's capable of. Member 1 statement. As I originally intended to keep this information to myself for the rest of my life, I would like to ensure that my right to privacy is respected. Knowing Caleb's behavior towards the youth has only deteriorated over the years, I feel the need to share my story in order to provide insight into how these issues with Caleb have evolved over time. Oh no. See, this is... Yeah. In September 2017, I was a 22-year-old woman who found out about SYNA through a mutual friend who was also engaged in political activism. My personal interest in foreign relations history led me to join a group that prides itself on intellectual discourse and on educating ourselves and others about the human rights we deserve. I felt so engaged that I even included SYNA on my resume, listing that I helped with organizing events related to labor history, workers' rights, and that some of our members did food drives and laundry drives. We all noticed that Caleb was an unofficial leader of the group. He was 29 at the time. 2017, 29. I thought he was 40. So he was 31 in 2019 when he was trying to get together with he was 31 when he was flirting with member 2, who was 19, and trying to manipulate her. Not a good look. He was 29 at the time, had a consistent income, and he was willing to spend his income on event space, whereas we were younger and without the ability to spend much of our incomes on event space and organizing. Caleb was SYNA's de facto leader, and all decisions would need his approval. Anyone who made their own decisions regarding activism without his knowledge or approval could face his judgment, criticism, and gossip. Yeah, fucking... what a loser. When I got a new side job that involved teaching in 2018, Caleb began to mention his rough childhood to me more often. During one-on-one conversations, he would mention different stories, all tying back to these main points. He always found it hard to make friends, he was bullied badly, and he was physically abused growing up. Yep. Sounds about right. Caleb spoke more often about being spanked at school, and then finally made it clear he gets sexual gratification from being spanked now as an adult, and sees a dominatrix twice a month with his wife's permission. I thought it was kind of strange that Caleb was telling me all this, but I figured he was trying to be friendly and jovial, the way some friends do talk about sex, plus he had mentioned how much of a struggle it was for him to always was for him to make friends. It was weird to me because I thought our political professional friendship in SYNA was fine the way it was. I kept defaulting to having empathy for his rough situation and self-proclaimed social awkwardness, which he only brought up as a manipulative tactic. So, there's that. Another thing that Caleb mentioned to me at some point in 2018 was that he would ask women if they were ever spanked as a child and like to talk to women about their experiences and share his own childhood spanking memories. Caleb told me he knows this is bad, but he would take what they shared with him and masturbate about them being spanked. Not them being spanked as a child, but he would just masturbate to the whole idea of them expressing their feelings on being spanked and punished. I was really shocked and disgusted he had told me this. Yeah, I bet you were. Are we noticing a trend here? He likes to bring up how he was socially awkward as a child, and he was bullied, and he was physically abused, and... it's a way to gather sympathy and have people pity him, essentially, so that he can weasel his way in with the manipulation tactics. It's standard cult shit. It's literally a standard cult play. It really is. Yep, he creates gossip between members. So, this member was kicked out for putting their foot down. I'll go ahead and just tell you that. He would spread gossip, and knowing the way that he was, this member was scared to ever shoot down any sexual conversations with, like, telling him to knock it off, because he didn't want the gossip spread and shit. So, between February 2019 and April 2019, Caleb began mentioning the idea of a social media coach. Caleb started to increase how often he would bring up the social media coach idea. He wanted to find a woman who would text him throughout the week to check in on him and make sure to shame and admonish him if he wasn't reaching his goals and growing his following online. Then the social media coach would meet up with him and spank his rear end at the end of the week, which he would pay for. I kept once again trying to do deflecting measures, like I would tell him to check out an app called Seeking Arrangements, where he can create a profile and find someone to charter up this sexual financial agreement with. I wasn't exactly uncomfortable yet, because I knew I could always reject any advance, but it was also honestly starting to get annoying, and if he wanted his fix so bad, he needed to just go somewhere and find it and stop talking to me about it all the time, considering the fact I was a member of SYNA and therefore, first and foremost, a comrade activist. Again, Caleb was simultaneously telling me I was such a kind and special friend and such a hardworking SYNA member. I felt empathy for how he said he felt like he an outcast growing up, how I'm finally a great friend he has that he trusts, and also how disappointed he is in other SYNA members compared to myself. All of that is manipulation cult tactics 101. If you don't sit there and listen to that and go, well, yeah, no, the way that Vosh put it is the best. They don't mind the red flags because they think it's communism. But still showing the fear that if they told Maupin to just cut it out, they wouldn't be in SYNA or have a working friendship anymore. So more manipulative tactics. Something clicked in my head on April 17, 2019, when he wrote in a message that he will get in touch with his old roommate about this social media coach idea. Yeah, okay. Bottom until it's red and bruised doesn't arouse you, so you won't do it with passion. Right, and I know there are things too, like financial domination and stuff, but yeah, I'm not passionate about it. So in the end, I felt like I would be wasting their time and money, and I would go through a lot of effort for something that makes me feel gross, because I had imagined most clients are not young or attractive. My old roommate, she seemed interested in some of this. Name is blocked out, if you see here. That's, it's very clearly been edited. The E's even clipped off. My old roommate, yeah. She seemed really interested in some of this. I'm gonna casually bring up the social media discipline thing when I see her next week. Not directly ask her, but just casually bring it up. See how she responds. The thing that he's been doing to her this entire time. Like, yeah, if you haven't noticed. Just casually bring it up. It's been more than once. He would just casually bring it up for months now. And now he's just saying that he's going to do it to another person as a way to casually bring it up again to the same person. See how she... Yeah, not directly ask her, but just casually bring it up. See how she reacts. Yeah, nothing to lose. I can't do that for you, just so you know. Only because you have mentioned it to me. You should have put a lot. LOL. I wasn't propositioning you. Don't worry. We're comrades. I don't bring this stuff into politics. Yeah, you do. That's all you do, apparently. He said he would talk about this idea to the roommate and see if she is interested in being his social media coach. My response to that information was to take my chance and finally make it clear that I will never be interested in engaging in acts of prostitution for Caleb. To me, I believed that he was hoping I would do exactly what he had hoped would happen with his old roommate. He was talking about this idea to me often, the way he said he would talk about it to the old roommate, in the hopes that she responds to the idea in a positive way. This conversation on April 17, 2019 ended nicely with him apologizing and complimenting me, complimenting my contributions to SYNA, and how well I carry myself in my day-to-day life, heavily complimenting my personal, financial, career success. As a side note, I was doing very well for myself in 2019. I had a great job and a vibrant social life and hobbies. I worked very hard, both at my regular job and in SYNA, and Caleb do all of this and complimented me very often for it. This is important for me to mention, due to the way Caleb has chosen to slander my image reputation to other comrades. This conversation on April 17, 2019 was the first and final time I had ever made it clear that I was uninterested in any prostitution and sexual involvement with Caleb. Our conversations between April 17 onward, from April 17 onward, then did focus more on politics, but he would still mention his sexual things to me, like messaging me 5 days later that he is getting ready to go meet his dominatrix to get spanked. I ignored that and continued to keep the conversation intellectual, jovial, and respectful. Around the same time, there were offers to go on an all-expenses-paid trip to Venezuela to promote friendship between America and Venezuela and to protest Juan Guaido's presidency, paid for by Venezuelan political groups. Though this sounded like an alluring offer since it was all expenses paid, the relations between America and Venezuela were particularly tense in April and May 2019 due to Juan Guaido's insertion as president of Venezuela, and at that time Venezuelan officials made threats to shut off power at the U.S. Embassy, and American officials began plans to pull diplomats out of Venezuela. I didn't see why I should be pressured to take this free trip to Venezuela to protest against Guaido, therefore protesting against America, and risk consequences during my time there or upon my return to America. Sailing was good. The idea seemed very risky and out of touch for Kelly to be suggesting. Yep. Think about the group that she's in. Usually our activism was within New York City or America. We were students in use for a new America. And Caleb was usually the first person to speak up loudly about us making sure we behave cordially and safe outside online. For example, making sure we never talk about guns or promoting violence. And just always trying to make sure that we only promote safe and legal forms of free speech. Sure. So this seemed very out of character that Caleb felt insistent that I needed to drop my work and take a trip to Venezuela to condemn America, and that I shouldn't care about any repercussions this could have upon my return back to America. You're about to find out the bombshell here. Caleb's insistence that I go to Venezuela to condemn America came to a head on May 1st, 2019, where at 1 a.m. he sent me a message asking why I and other SYNA members don't have as much drive as him. He explained that he is so accomplished and he has done so many risky political acts through his life, and he now has a comfortable job, which is why he couldn't go to Venezuela. Well, I'm not gonna go, but you need to go. But it was really disappointing that none of us would go to Venezuela. In my head, this was such a joke. He stated that he can't go to Venezuela because he currently has a comfortable job, and he wants us all to drop whatever we're doing and go there in such a tense political climate during May 2019. I told him that I had to wake up early in the morning and for work, and that he needed to leave me alone. And write articles, and travel the world, and be a big communist revolutionary leader, and the whole world has done everything to block me from doing that. I sold my blood plasma, I got mistreated for years in WWP, and now I have a nice comfortable job. I'm well known, comparatively speaking. I don't get it. Here, I'm practically begging people to do what I have fought to do my whole life. The door is wide open, and people don't want it. Why did I have to fight so hard to do what other people don't even care enough to do? My deepest apologies, I can't speak for others, and I've already explained I care about my personal safety. It's not an issue of apologizing. You did not do anything wrong. You just aren't like me. Caleb Maupin, built different. Well, he kind of is. He's built like a predator. I know I didn't do anything wrong. Okay, then. Where are people like me? If anyone knows Caleb, you know he's extremely persistent, pushy, wants to isolate you, and he wants you to take huge risks with your employment and family relationships to show your devotion and commitment to his group, and that he sends text message essays about why you're wrong and bad. 30 minutes after I told him to leave me alone and let me sleep, my phone started buzzing with his incoming text, rapid fire. What ensued next was a 2-hour back-and-forth argument where he tried out every manipulation tactic to try to tell me why I'm wrong for not going to Venezuela, and adding in new argument components, such as accusing me of being the one to have initiated this argument. He was clearly the one who initiated the argument, while I was the one asking him to stop and let me sleep for work in the morning. Claiming that I did this to feel superior to him, and because I supposedly thought he was a freak, because I'm a normie, and I'm scared of the U.S. Embassy in Venezuela closing, so I should never have gotten involved with SYNA in the first place, which to me was an immediate red flag about his isolating behavior. Oh, you notice that red flag. Finally, you notice a red flag, and you don't think of it as fucking communism. He should not want his members to ever feel unsafe or unprotected, yet he keeps making people feel complimented for taking huge risks to their safety, employment, family relationships. Venezuela is that you don't think you'll be able to call the U.S. Embassy. You never understood what SYNA was about. And if you're scared of being put on a list, you really should stay the fuck away from me. Yeah. Honestly, the best advice that has ever come out of Caleb Maupin. It's pathetic, after all the time and money I've contributed to SYNA, that this is what you chose to start your attack on me over. It was not an attack on you. All of this has not been an attack? Really? All of this? Yeah, no, that's gaslight. You have a little, and then, yeah, gaslight and try and turn it around to play the victim. You've lulled me into thinking you were someone I can whine to you about my problems with. You gained my trust. You got me to open up to you. Well, you included me in your problems, which I don't support. About others. Wish I could see what the rest of that was. I maintained my position during our entire argument. I wanted him to apologize for being disrespectful to me and for pressuring me to engage in a situation I felt unsafe about, that he himself was unwilling to do because of his comfortable job. The 2-hour conversation kept going. Also, at that point, he owed me $157, which I had spotted him because he was always running out of money. I didn't want to get blocked by him before getting my money back. That's actually a super fucking based approach there. I also was nervous to silence or turn off my phone because of how dramatically he twists stories about people. I feel like I wanted this argument to remain between only Caleb and I that evening and to get resolved by us only, ideally, without him creating gossip and lies about me to other people over this. I was afraid if I truly did cut off our argument and go to sleep before getting him to stop on his own accord, I'd wake up in the morning to hundreds of messages or multiple people who had only heard Caleb's version of events asking me why I was so horrible to Caleb, and a whole new messy issue of new twisted gossip and drama. Our argument goes in circles, with me resisting all of his manipulation attempts and him baiting me to try to criticize him or call him names until 3 a.m. Here is where member 1 really kind of fucked up. After this May 1st argument, I shared a PDF file of the screenshots between Caleb and the SYNA Facebook message group chat. You shouldn't have done that one. You should have held that one as evidence. That way, if he did start a rumor, boom. Or you reach out to other people in the group and start compiling shit like this and drop the whole goddamn thing. Shared PDF file of screenshots between Caleb and I in the SYNA Facebook message group chat. The PDF file contained the entire 2-hour text argument because I know Caleb creates drama and makes lies to suit himself, so I included the entire argument so that no one could ever accuse me of posting anything out of context. At the time, when I shared the PDF file in the SYNA chat, I told everyone that this is how Caleb speaks to me personally, and I really don't care. I really don't like being treated this way. At the time, no one had my back, no one cared to reach out, and Caleb kicked me out of the chat group and told me that sharing screenshots of our personal conversation was wrong to do, and he once again accused me of luring him into trusting me. And that I betrayed him by posting the PDF of the argument. Yeah. Everyone in the chat was super confused about what the PDF even meant. They were right to be confused. It happened so fast, out of nowhere. Blah, 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 blah. That's when I realized everyone in the group is currently in denial and is a victim themselves. I was removed from the SYNA chats, and since Caleb was the ringleader of everything, it was impossible for me to ever be able to come to events or continue helping out like I used to. I feel like on April 17, 2019, when I shut down any notion of ever prostituting myself out for Caleb, he tried to act nice and normal for a bit, and then created the argument, which is exactly what happened. He was just thinking up a way to try and get you removed from the group, finding a way to be able to push you out. Oh, and then he slandered. So, I'm not going to go over literally the entire document. Keaton Mansfield, when I was 18 years old, left rural Illinois. So he exploited the fuck out of Keaton. Honestly. Fucked up 2 cars. And this is a text okay, this is the only important part. Around the time of New Year's 2020, from Keaton's thing, like, he's a fucked up dude too, especially. Around the time of New Year's 2022, Caleb sent me a screenshot of an argument he was having with his wife. For some fucking reason. In it, you can see him mention that he plans to make enough money off of CPI so that he can quit his job at RT, and he says blatantly that he will live in a compound in the woods, that he would build a compound in the woods where he would live with the kids. That's not how adults act. That's why I'm moving up in the world and you aren't. You don't have social skills. You are the one. You are the one. I am asserting myself like an adult, and I might get my bonus. I'm assuming dream on. Eventually I'm going to make enough money with CPI that I will quit RT, and then I will leave you also. I'm going to set up a big compound in the woods where I live with all the kids, and in a studio to broadcast my show over the internet. This is fucked up. Oh yeah, and then told Keaton about the whole sex worker thing, and then Yankee Tanky also was sent about that. Like, it's a long goddamn document, y'all. Flame of Liberation. Oh, wait, this was to Nick? Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, and then another one was like, because this said that member 2 was doing drugs, and that they went to a dinner with some other CPI members, like Caleb and blah blah blah, and that they went outside and member 2 was curled up on the sidewalk. Like, what the fuck? So as you can see, Caleb Maupin is a huge piece of shit. Last thing before I go, Gorbachev died.